Today's social media segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. Waits and Downer, attorneys at law. Terrebonne Ford, built Ford tough.
I'm Price Bourgeois with Bourgeois Insurance. Make sure to catch Medicare Minute, where we talk all things Medicare, saving on Medicare, maximizing Medicare, Medicare scams, and much more. It airs after To Your Health and other times on HTV.
Everybody, and welcome into Going Public. I am Harry McCullough. This week we'll be speaking with the North Lafourche Levee District, the Executive Director, Dwayne Bourgeois, and the District Program Manager, Arthur Simon. Thanks so much for you guys for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Look, June 1st is rolling along, right?
It's that time of year. It's that time we have to start thinking about everything. Well, we never stop thinking about it, but I think that I'd say broadly the public has to really think about it a good bit.
You know, what happened here 3 years ago now, we all kind of like to bury our heads because it's been quiet a little bit, but it's rolling along. And the other day when NOAA made their estimate of what we can expect this year, it kind of caught a lot of people. Like I said, I wanted to just change the channel. I didn't want to even look at it.
Yeah.
But it's going to be more than likely an active season.
Well, that's what we wanted to talk about. I think we have a slide that it was NOAA's predictions, and it is for a very active season, and that means a lot of things, but we really just have to remain, weather aware, basically, right? So there's 85% that we're going to be much higher than normal, above normal season. But there's a lot of storms, but it doesn't necessarily mean all of these storms impact us. But as we've said time and time again, it only needs one storm to get to you, and that's the problems that we face. So there's a couple of things I wanted to put up a couple of slides that I thought were interesting. Without going into any meteorology, the next slide talks about what happens when you have El Nino year, which is there's an oscillation in the Eastern Pacific that happens every year or so, and when you had an El Nino year, it suppresses things. There's some connectivity to the Atlantic in the area that the storms fall in. Well, we don't have that this year. The next slide, we have what's called La Nina, and so what I'm getting at is it's pretty good confidence that NOAA's looking at what we're doing here. So with the La Nina year, you have cooler water in the Eastern Pacific, which means you have not necessarily warmer water in the Eastern Pacific, but what you have is a less stable atmosphere. So it tends to, El Nino tends to cause shear, which, as one of the articles said, perturbs storms creations.
Right.
It's like,
the last couple of years. Yeah.
I like it to be more than perturb it. I'd like to stop it. But in essence, it's a vertical column. So if you have shear, the top's not over the bottom, and it's it. So this is the area where we have a lot of regional development and of storms. And I kind of wanted to put this slide in because this is also a cycle in our climate, but this one's decades long. So we're in a warmer cycle in this development region that's been around since 1995, and before that it was a whole bunch of years before it that you actually had it. So there's a good bit of confidence in their projections this year that it's going to be active. There's a lot that can make some slight differences that would be better for us, right? So strong storms in the Eastern Atlantic tend to curve north there. So they'll get their forecast projections because there's a bunch of storms, but we won't have the impact, which is our preferred example. And, you still have the ability for storms that pop up in the Caribbean and the Gulf, which are very, very hot. So it's basically unknown situation for us, but we have to be aware. We'd all vote for no storms. We had enough trouble with Ida, and we just don't want to.
So we're in La Nina now.
We're in a La Nina
But
period.
they tend to curve north.
Well,
earlier?
if the storm is strong in the eastern Atlantic, and I'm not a meteorologist,
Sure, yeah, no,
but
no.
I am, I, in my line of business, I kind of have to pay attention to these things.
Right.
So we've seen historically, and that's what it's important about what NOAA's doing here is they're looking at historically when you have a La Nina year, what happens? Well, we'll have more storms because the atmosphere is
favorable,
more stable for the development of stronger storms. And if they get super strong, so actually the heat content out in the eastern Atlantic can actually make the storms strong enough faster. And when they are strong, they tend to curve to the north out in the Atlantic and what we call fish, right?
Yeah.
They're fish storms, so it's not anything that hurts us. But when we have a situation where the trade winds and the winds prevailing carry it all the way to the Caribbean, then they can turn to the north and come in our direction. And then so those long track storms can be very bad because they've got a lot of time to develop. So.
Yeah, and as you were saying, if something happens down at the Bay of Campeche or one of those areas like Ida did and just come straight north.
Right. I mean, this is not even related to that. It's just about the heat content in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, which is high. But then you also have to, the wind shear is a big factor in everything. And so you always watch that. There's going to be a couple of new products that NOAA's going to come out with this year that I think is important. They're going to be running a beta version of their cone. We've all seen their Era cone, but in the past where the watches and warnings were only along the coastal areas, their new cone is going to actually show tropical storm warnings, watches, hurricane warnings, watches inland.
Right.
And so that could be helpful if you had to figure out which way to go and, say, well, I think I can make it around, and you'll see that these areas are warnings.
Right. And I always kind of look at it, 25 storms, look, we ran out of names a couple of years ago. We ended up in the Zetas and Betas and all of that.
2020 was insane.
But it only takes, like you say, it could be one. It could be a name, and if it's the wrong one, it could get you. So something to be looking at. That major hurricane down there, that seems like a big number too. That 4 to 7.
That's a pretty broad number. 4 is every bit of that is above the average.
Right. So we'll hopefully be more fish storms than anything. So let's take a break, and we'll get into more preparedness when we come back on this edition of Going Public.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health System. Your health is our legacy. Rouse's, you're either local or you're not. Buick, the craft of modern luxury. St. Martin and Bork, know your rights.
Everybody, welcome back to Going Public. We were talking with the North Lafourche Levee District team. Of course, that would be Dwayne Bourgeois and Arthur Alzheimer. Thanks so much for being here, guys. And so we talked about what might be happening as far as the hurricane season, but what specifically has the North Lafourche Levee District been doing to prepare for?
Well, we always are preparing year round.
Yeah.
But, we kind of going into the year, we always look at what we knew and then what Ida taught us. And one of the preparations is we realized we had to harden our facilities. We had to be very self-sufficient for a longer period of time with being able to fuel equipment and being able to prepare those things and having people on standby to support us, which we always had, but it just kind of bolstered our effort and made us a little more focused on what needed to be done. So we've constantly worked that out, and we come up with maintenance plans because we do have a lot of water control structures and that we have to operate, and they all have a little different operational guidelines and parameters and how we function those. So generally speaking, we prepare year round, but as we go into hurricane season, we certainly make sure everything is functioning. So coming in probably about a month ago, we started with going through all our gate structures where we operate them, and we functionally check them. We do this ahead of time in case we need to order parts or say we need to do something to correct them so that they can function. We also do this to see how long it takes us to go through the process, because as we build more levee systems, we improve these systems, we're always adding more structures. So the process changes annually, and we always have to be updating our plan. So that's all things we work through.
Yeah, and I'm sure as you do it, levy things, then it might affect the way other things happen too, where everything works together, as you always do. Then you find, oh, well, we got to do this as well.
Yeah, a lot of the things we have to do, just interjecting, have to be open, right? Just like in Terrebonne Parish, there's the Megander, the Gulf system, which is open normally to let the ebb and flow, the tide in and let systems operate the way they were intended environmentally. But when a storm's coming, you also have to be ready to close those things. So there's the big exercise program and those things that we're doing on a regular basis to make sure that when the storm comes, we can mobilize, close off the systems and protect that storm surge from getting in. And then there'll be some pumps, but there's also other isolation things and some things that have agreements that drain into our forced drainage areas, but are not allowed if we had a storm. So there's those things. And then we've got our ongoing projects, which we do different things for.
So, we'll start with the Raceland Prairie.
Yes, we brought a slide and it's a picture. And one of the things, just to show the forethought we put into this, is as we go through the design process, we assess the type of project it's going to be. And although what you see in there is a finished project, and that's Bayou Falls, and this is part of Raceland Prairie 212, and that's Highway 90 in the background. But one of the things we do is we control how much area that the contractors can work at one time. So and that's a limitation that's put in the plans. So you only can work 1,000 feet, and that's for a capping project. So we're really capping and widening. I would say this, even if we see where certain levee projects, we have to maybe degrade the levee to a certain extent during the process, we may limit that to 500 or even 250 feet. Never more. You never take down more than you can put back in an immediate time frame.
Quick, yeah.
And we also put in, they have to have hurricane plans in place going into hurricane season. They have to submit that for our engineers to review and approve. And one of the other things we always have the rule, and I mentioned degrading a levee, we never go into a storm with less protection than what we start with. So we'll always be limited going into hurricane season and saying you've got to maintain the level of protection currently that we have. And going into a storm, if we get a storm coming, first thing we do is we send out emails. We have our engineers prepare. They're controlling the projects, start having these guys tighten everything up, ensure we have the maximum protection we can for that area.
Right. Now, North Lafourche, did y'all have damage to any of these during the storm?
We didn't have
it kind of turned a little bit.
We did have some damage to levees in LaRose where it was overtopped, and in Kramer area where it was overtopped. Mm-hmm. So the levees did have a good bit of damage that we had to come back and repair. But, we're continuing to move on things constantly.
Right.
And one other point I'll mention is that, there are certain jobs that we won't even entertain during hurricane season, right? So we're very, very cautious about it. People, I think, when they're seeing a project, they're wondering if they're in a compromised situation in their forced drainage areas. I want to assure everybody, we're not, worse off than you were before, because we make sure the contractor sticks and done.
Right. Also, Hollywood Canal is another project?
Yeah, that's a project we recently completed. That's a picture of it. It has this structure on the southern side. It's just south of the Prospect Bypass, and we have the sister structure on the north side. And this protects the Bayou Blue community from storm surge. We recently went through and ran the structures, timed it out, and this is something we were talking about. As this is a new structure, it has 9 gates. We have to know how long it takes us to close it, how long, because we got to make sure all this is done ahead of the storm.
Mm-hmm.
and we go through that process annually.
Yeah, no, it's always important, but yeah, you don't want to get in the middle of a project. You said like 1,000 feet, and then suddenly like, whoa, we got a storm that's going to be here in 2 days. You know, so yeah, very important. So we'll take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about preparing for the storm as we are right here on hurricane season. We'll be right back, right here on Going Public.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality.
Everybody, welcome back to Going Public. I am Harry McCullough. We're talking North Lafourche Levee District, Dwayne Bourgeois, and North Osama. Look, we've talked about FEMA on these programs. We've kind of gotten on them a little bit, but we got to give them a little credit here as we get ready for hurricanes.
All right, we've talked about what NOAA thinks is coming. We talked about what the North Lafourche Levee District does, and now we want to talk about what people can do in preparation for the storm. And look, we've got people who are unfortunately very skilled in all of this. All right, they've got a lot of things that they know to do and what have you. One of the things that I like about FEMA's ready.gov site, and we're going to show things, it's a checklist format, right? So when you've got a storm bearing down on you, you're worried about 100 things, right? And the nice thing about it, it's a good resource because it offers you a couple of checklists. We've got a slide or two that you can see without going into things. It's just a whole bunch of things that you can say, okay, did I do all of those things? And I think we've got the next slide that's another version of their emergency supply checklist, and then there's another one to where you really have an opportunity by going through this checklist to make sure that you didn't forget anything, right? And so, like you said, I've been kind of down on FEMA on a few things with regards to flood insurance and risk rating 2.0. Not so much our friends in Denton who just got clobbered by a tornado this weekend, but those guys are doing the mapping work with us. But this risk rating 2.0 bunch has. I've been on them. So I have to say FEMA's ready.gov site this is what's really in FEMA's lane and what they do well. And I would encourage everybody to check that out if they need some help with things. I mean, you've done it, you're good at it and what have you, but it's always something that can maybe spur something. Because if you're super busy, God knows you might miss a thing or two. Right? So.
I remember covering a storm a few years ago. I was still in New Orleans. They sent me down to La Rose. We had a storm coming, and they went to the shelter in La Rose. They had like 2 people there. We had 4 satellite trucks outside the parking lot. I said, we've got the refugees outnumbered 4-2 out here because the people knew it wasn't that big of an event. Media likes to go crazy, but we do have a very high environmental IQ, I think, in this area, that people kind of can tell the difference between a tropical storm and one that they got to really get out for.
Yeah, and I think that's good and bad for us. It's good, by and large, it's much better than not having that situational awareness, right? But, when it comes to a storm like Ida that was super strong, there was a lot of people that remained in their homes that probably should have left.
And I think some of them will leave next time.
And I guess I'm sure that's going to be a little different, right? And, the thing that we try to do, we do everything we can with the resources we have, but our goal is to protect your home as best we can from flooding. I can't protect it with a levee from the wind, right? And when you have those type of things, we maybe focus a little too much on the flooding when it's a wind event of, in this case, historical proportions that should have gotten a few people out. And there's always the concerns: what happens when I leave? How do I get back? And what have you. But I think that people should really consider that because. It was quite dangerous.
We were also talking about what can individuals do to prepare and make sure that they can do their part to make sure that their place doesn't.
Yeah, well, getting back to the flooding, right? The flooding side of it, right? And so when you've got a tropical event, you've got a lot of water coming in rain-wise. Let's say that the levees do hold, and that's what we're hoping for. There's still internal drainage issues, right? And one of the things that we've always go out right before storms, hey, clean your catch basins, make sure you've got something. And, you know, you don't want to be that person where, okay, I had a trash can that I should have picked up and made sure was secure, and it got blown into a ditch, and it now blocks a ditch, and you're now putting water on your house and your neighbor's house. And it's just little things. It's those little things will come back and catch you in these storms. You know, trash can covers, basketballs love culverts. They will go to a culvert more than the goal at any given time, and they'll block the culvert, and then, you know, they'll be in there, wedged in there, and then it's not easy to get out, and you wind up water backing up and everything else. So on top of the trees and everything else that can complicate drainage issues, you'd have all of these things. So the more they can do in that regard, I think is the biggest thing. But again, you know, and like you said, our people are pretty seasoned at this. Situational awareness, pay attention to those things, make your checklist, get your preparations. And the time to do it's now as compared to later.
Yeah, we were talking, June 1st starts the hurricane season. Mm-hmm. June's whatever.
Yeah,
we've had some in May,
but June is really not.
August is when we really got to start zeroing in.
When we start from mid-August to, I think, September 10th is the actual
that's that big
peak of the whole season. But by August, we'll have some things that's going to be watching, right? So now June is the easiest, cheapest time to get some of those things done and get them out the way while there's availability of that stuff. And
look, I don't know about y'all, but I was talking earlier, I drove to New Iberia to get an ice chest or to buy gas, do all those kind of things. Yeah. Probably should have done it maybe a little bit ahead of time.
Right.
So,
it's things we do. I mean, inside of our organization, we've actually got a meeting, I think tomorrow, again, rechecking, making sure that we've done everything we can be to be as prepared as possible. Like you said, we've armored our building even further because Ida, blew the roof off. Right. And I got a call in the middle of the storm. Hey, your roof blew off as well. When the wind changes direction, maybe it'll blow back on. Wow, there's nothing we can do, right? I mean, you've got to be prepared. And,
and you guys have been working year round. It was a hot summer drought wise, but you guys got a lot of work done, I'm sure, last year, right?
Yeah, but we've got a 200 mile an hour rated roof now, so we're as better off.
Absolutely. Well, good luck, you guys. Appreciate you guys filling everybody in, and we'll see what happens as we start hurricane season 2024.
It's in God's hands.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you, guys. That's Going Public. I'm Harry McCullough. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.
I'm Price Bourgeois with Bourgeois Insurance. Make sure to catch Medicare Minute, where we talk all things Medicare, saving on Medicare, maximizing Medicare, Medicare scams, and much more. It airs after To Your Health and other times on HTV.